There is a lot of craftable weapons inside of Destiny 2. In order to craft all of these weapons from each category, it's going to take you a lot of time. Thankfully, we now have deep sight harmonizers, which can speed this process up just a little bit quicker each season. However, in some categories, there is more than 6 or 7 weapons to pick and choose of which one you want to craft. So in today's video, I want to simplify the crafting menu and pick one weapon from each category that is a must-have craft. There are so many different weapons for each different activity, and it all depends on how you play the game. So all of these weapons that I'm choosing today are just the best and most effective in the general Destiny 2 sandbox. So without waiting any longer, let's get straight into this list. The first weapon on this list is the EREMITE AR2, which is obviously in the auto rifle category. I've chosen the EREMITE AR2 because one, it excels really well inside of PvE, but it is also a great pick for the PvP sandbox. If you want to use this weapon inside of PvE, you can use perks like dynamic sway reduction and incandescent, meaning every enemy you kill and explodes, it's going to spread more scorch to more enemies and cause more incandescent explosions. However, if you prefer to play PvP more, you can run with dynamic sway reduction and tap the trigger, which makes it a complete laser beam inside of the Crucible. This is a solid choice of an auto rifle because it covers PvP and also PvE. Moving over to the combat bows, I have chosen the Under Your Skin. Even though bows aren't the most popular weapon to use inside of PvE, I would run with Archer's Tempo and Explosive Head. This weapon is also a Void archetype, so if you run it with a Void subclass and you proc volatile rounds, it's going to do some pretty hefty work. However, if it was me, I would recommend to just use the Wish Ender. It's the best bow in the game, and there's no point in using anything else. Moving on to hand cannons, I would recommend crafting the ZAOULI'S Bane from the King's Fall raid. With the most recent hand cannon buff coming into Destiny, it's making hand cannons feel really superior inside of the PvE sandbox. They are hitting very hard, and they just feel really nice again. The ZAOULI'S Bane can be crafted with explosive payload and also incandescent. It also has the origin trait Runneth Over, which when you reload near allies, it's going to overflow the magazine. This is definitely an underrated origin trait, especially when you're in a raid instance. Whenever you reload near 3 or more allies, it's going to give you a few extra bullets in your magazine. Because this gun is also solar, it's going to pair in very well with your solar subclass and the aspects. Moving on to the pulse rifles, I would recommend crafting the BXR-55 Battler. This weapon is obtained through the Dares of Eternity, a pretty fun activity to grind out with some friends. The god roll for the Battler is definitely Demolitionist and Incandescent. So just like the EREMITE auto rifle, you're going to be exploding enemies and spreading scorch all over the battlefield. Pair this with Demolitionist and you're going to be spamming grenades out all at the same time. Not only is the Battler good inside of PvE, but it also has a pretty good position inside the Crucible. If you want to use this one inside of the Crucible, I would recommend running Kill Clip and Perpetual Motion. Next up, we have the Scout Rifles, and there is no other choice but the Doom of CHELCHIS. The Doom of CHELCHIS drops from the King's Fall raid. However, what makes this gun so special is its perk pool. It can have 2 damage boosting perks on at the same time. These 2 perks being Explosive Payload and Frenzy. Because the Doom of CHELCHIS is a void gun, when you pair this with volatile rounds, it does a lot of work. If I'm ever doing Grandmaster Nightfalls and I want to run a void subclass, the Doom of CHELCHIS is always my first pick. Moving on to the sidearms, I would recommend crafting the Brigand's Law. This is a arc sidearm and it acts as a mini Ikelos SMG. With the perks Feeding Frenzy and Vault Shot, it's basically the same thing, however it hits a little harder than the SMGs. Sidearms are some of the lesser used weapons in the game, however I recommend that all Guardians actually give them a try because they're just as good as SMGs. They don't have as much range, but they definitely hit a lot harder. So if you haven't tried the Brigand's Law yet, I definitely recommend to give it a go. It's a lot of fun when you get 5 stacks of Feeding Frenzy. Just quickly, if you didn't realize, the exotic mission rotator has been implemented into this season of Destiny, and a lot of these old previous seasonal weapons that I'm recommending you guys craft, you can now actually farm these weapons whenever that exotic mission rotator is the one you want. And if you get the gun to drop, but it's not in red border, don't be hesitant to use a deep sight harmonizer on it. I feel as though most Guardians do know this exists now, but I thought I'd just mention it quickly in the middle of this video. Anyway, let's move on to the submachine guns, and my recommendation is none other than the Callus Mini Tool. This is by far my most used weapon in the entire game, with its amazing perks Incandescent and Unrelenting, meaning every kill you get is going to explode, give you health, and then spread more scorch to the enemies around it. There's not much more to talk about this gun, it speaks for itself, and I just recommend you have one in your arsenal. Moving over to fusion rifles, we have an easy one to get, and I recommend crafting the Eremite. The Eremite is from this season, season 22, at the Witch's Table. This is a high impact fusion rifle, meaning it does the most damage to all bosses out of all the fusion rifle archetypes. The god roll for this one is Envious Assassin and Controlled Burst, with Envious Assassin overflowing the magazine up to double, and then once you've hit a burst on a boss, with the Controlled Burst proccing, it's going to increase the damage by 20% and decrease the charge time by 10%. This is a great gun to pair with the Tractor Cannon if you're the designated debuffer in your raid group. Moving on to glaives, I would recommend crafting the Enigma, but you probably already have this one crafted because it was the first weapon that every Guardian got to craft. I don't know why you would use glaives, but if you want to use one, use this one with Impulse Amplifier and Frenzy. Moving over to grenade launchers in the energy slot that use special ammo, I would recommend crafting none other than the Forbearance. Everyone knows what the Forbearance is. With Ambitious Assassin and Chain Reaction, it makes it the best ad clearing weapon in the entire game. You can get this weapon from the Vow of Disciple raid, and if you haven't got one, I seriously recommend you do some Vow of the Disciple to get this one crafted. It is by far the best ad clearing weapon in the entire game, with chain reaction and being a arc wave frame grenade launcher. This weapon is a lot of fun, and I always try to fit my loadouts around using it. Moving on to shotguns, I would recommend you guys craft the Heritage from the Deepstone Crypt. The Heritage is the best slug shotgun to use for burst boss DPS. With the perks Reconstruction and Recombination, it does a lot of damage. Reconstruction will reload the magazine over double its capacity when you're not having it equipped. With Recombination, it's going to make that first shot do a lot of damage depending on how many energy weapon kills you got before you pulled this gun out. There's no surprise being that a lot of these weapons on this list are raid weapons, it's because they are simply the best guns in the game to have. So if you haven't been doing your raids, make sure you try and get on the LFG and get them done. Up next we have the snipers, and I would recommend the Ichlos Sniper. Again, this is another weapon that you can go and farm this season through the exotic mission rotator. The Ichlos Sniper is a solar sniper rifle, meaning it will work with all of your solar surge mods when you pair it with a solar rocket launcher like the Apex Predator. This gun can also roll with the perks 4 times the charm and Focus Fury. So when you pair this with an Apex Predator, you can put both solar surge mods and solar reserves, and it's going to boost this weapon and your heavy rocket launcher in the boss DPS phase. This is a good weapon to use for any medium to long range boss DPS fights. While you wait for your rocket launcher to reload with something like Reconstruction, you can pull this one out and get a few shots off with Focus Fury, which does quite a bit of damage. Moving on to the trace rifles, I would recommend the Hollow Denial, which is a void trace rifle that can roll with lead from gold, and also Repulsor Brace. Now, although double specials have been nerfed, the trace rifles still have a place in the game, especially if you're playing a Cenotaph Warlock. The Hollow Denial is still a great gun to try out, and I would recommend you guys try and farm one through this season's exotic mission rotator. As for the grenade launchers in the heavy category, I would recommend crafting the Regnant. This one is super easy to get currently. It's still in the helm at the war table, and you can go and focus some engrams and get one crafted. The two best perks on almost every grenade launcher is Explosive Light and Auto Loading Holster, which makes it a pretty good nuke DPS for any champions in the game. As for linear fusion rifles, there is no other one to craft than the Cataclysmic. This weapon will also drop from the Vow of the Disciple raid, so if you're trying to get the Forbearance, look out for this one too. With the perk pool 4 times the charm and bait and switch, it makes this one the hardest hitting linear fusion rifle in the game. This is a great weapon to pull out if there's ever a long range boss, and if you need a sustained damage for a long DPS phase. As for the machine guns, there's none other than the Retrofit Escapade. With the perk pool 4 times the charm and target lock, it makes this weapon pretty fun to use, especially if you have a teammate with the Divinity on. I usually try and squeeze this one into a GM as well, because it does some pretty good damage to champions in a small instance where you need to nuke them down. Again, also because this one is void, it works very well with all of your void subclasses. Because this is a 900 RPM machine gun, it works very well when trying to proc volatile rounds. Second last on the list, we have rocket launchers, and obviously I'm going to recommend crafting the Apex Predator from the Last Wish raid. The perk pool on the Apex Predator can roll with Reconstruction and Bait and Switch. With Bait and Switch boosting its damage by 35% and Reconstruction reloading it when you're not using it, it makes it the best rocket to use in a DPS scenario. This gun is super simple to get, especially through the Cali Farm cheese in the Last Wish. And finally, to wrap this one up, we have swords, and there is none other to craft than the other half. You only need one of these weapons to drop from Dares of Eternity in a red border, and you can instantly craft this gun, making it very easy to craft. This one is on the list because it has the perk Eager Edge, which is the best perk in the entire game for well skating and just moving around the game a lot quicker. But anyway, Guardians, that will wrap the list up right there. Thank you so much for watching. If you got this far in the video, it means a lot. Feel free to drop a like and a subscribe down below and comment what your favorite craftable gun is inside of Destiny 2. But again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.